Hello again. It's good to have you back. I see so many of you from all over Texas, Florida, Ontario, London. Thank you for being here. If you're just joining me, you might want to watch part 1. Because where we left off, the ground had just fallen out from under my feet. I was sitting in the dark. In my old armchair. 2 phones on the table beside me. One, my old life. The other, a direct line to a ghost. John Carter. The man who'd just pulled me out of retirement with a smile and a threat. The night was long. I didn't sleep. I watched the darkness outside my window slowly turn to gray. I wasn't thinking like a father anymore. The part of me that was hurt, that was heartbroken by my son's betrayal. I had to pack that away. Put it in a box and lock it. There was no room for that pain now. There was only room for the cold, clear logic of the keeper. Carter said he knew the back doors to my money. To my son's safety net. That was the leash. He could pull it any time. I had to assume it was true. So, running wasn't an option. Not yet. Fighting him head-on? A man like Carter doesn't fight fair. He disappears you. Or worse, he disappears the people you love. So, I had to play. I had to go to the diner. I had to hear the job. But the keeper had one rule. Never walk into a room without knowing more than the other guy thinks you do. And I knew something. A tiny, fragile secret from 25 years ago. My last job. It was a simple retrieval. A man had taken something that didn't belong to him, a ledger, a list of names and numbers. My job was to get it back, no questions asked. I did it. Clean. Silent. But when I handed the small, sealed envelope to Carter, I felt a discrepancy. The weight was wrong. Just slightly. I'd handled enough sealed envelopes to know. Later that night, alone, a thought ate at me. I had a safe deposit box under a name no one knew, in a city I never visited. A final precaution. I drove there. I opened the envelope I'd almost given to Carter. Inside, nestled against the ledger pages, was a single, unmarked silver USB drive. It hadn't been part of the briefing. Carter hadn't mentioned it. I never plugged it in. I didn't want to know. Knowing was death. I just took it out, sealed the envelope properly, and delivered it. I kept the drive. My insurance. My last secret key. I buried it in my mind along with the keeper. As the sun rose, that memory was all I had. A USB drive in a box. A ghost of a secret. Would it even work after 25 years? Was it just junk? It was a thread. And when you're hanging over a cliff, you grab any thread you can find. At 9:58 a.m., Carter's phone buzzed. Once. A text with an address. Not the diner. A warehouse district by the old river docks. Of course. The diner was a test. To see if I'd do the obvious thing. I hadn't. The keeper knew better. I changed clothes. Dark, simple, comfortable shoes. I looked in the mirror. The gentle grandfather was gone. The man looking back had eyes that were calm, empty, and ready. It was a frightening face. It was my face. The drive was quiet. The warehouse was exactly as you'd picture. Rusted, lonely, echoing with the sound of distant trains. Carter's black car was there, tucked in the shadow of a crumbling brick wall. He was leaning against it, sipping coffee from a paper cup. "You're early," he said, not looking at me. "You changed the location," I said, stopping a few feet away. "I wanted to see if you remembered how to think." He finally looked at me and gave a slight, approving nod. "You do. Good. Walk with me." We walked into the vast, hollow belly of the warehouse. Our footsteps echoed. Dust motes danced in shafts of light from broken windows. "The job," he said, his voice bouncing off the corrugated steel walls. "A man. Arthur Brandt. He's a mid-level financier. Clean record. Pillar of the community. He's also been skimming from certain off-book investments for the past 7 years. Investments belonging to my current employers. So have him audited," I said, my voice flat. Carter smiled his empty smile. "It's not about the money. It's about the list." He kept a list. A digital one. Every transaction, every fake name, every shell company. He was smart. He stored it on a single, isolated device. No cloud. No network. A digital fortress. A cold trickle of understanding started in my gut. 2 nights ago, Carter continued, that device was stolen. From a safe in his home study. While he was hosting a charity gala downstairs. The thief was elegant. No forced entry. No alarms. Just gone. He stopped walking and turned to me. "My employers believe Brandt staged the theft himself. That he's preparing to use the list as a bargaining chip. Or to disappear. They want the list retrieved. And they want Brandt to understand the permanent cost of betrayal. The meaning hung in the dusty air. They didn't just want the list back. They wanted me to make an example of Arthur Brant. Why me? I asked. You have younger, faster men. Because Brant's security system was designed by Silas Thorne. The name hit me like a punch. Silas Thorne, the best security architect of our generation. A recluse. A ghost. And the man whose ledger and mysterious USB drive I had retrieved 25 years ago. Carter's last job for me had been against Thorne's employer. Thorne's systems are puzzles, Carter said. They have a signature. A way of thinking. You're the only one who ever bypassed a Thorne system without setting off a single alarm. You got inside his employer's head. You can get inside Brant's. So that was it. The USB drive in my safe deposit box was a piece of a Thorne system. A key or a clue from a quarter-century ago. Carter didn't know I had it. But he knew I understood the lock. I get the list, I said. What happens to Brant? That's not your concern. Your concern is your son's mortgage. His wife's business. Your peaceful retirement. You get the list, you walk away. Everything stays as it is. He handed me a small folder. Inside were photos of Arthur Brant, a handsome man in his 50s with kind eyes. Schematics of a modern lakeside house. Security schedules. The list was believed to be on a custom, encrypted tablet. It was never connected to Wi-Fi. It lived in a safe that was itself inside a shielded room. The window is 3 nights from now, Carter said. Brant will be at a symphony fundraiser. A 5-hour window. Get in, get the tablet, get out. Leave no trace. I'll be in touch. He turned to leave. Carter, I said. He paused. If I do this, we're square. The leash is cut. You forget my name. You forget my son. He looked back over his shoulder, the winter blue eyes glinting in the dim light. Do the job, keeper. Then we'll talk about leashes. He walked away, his footsteps fading into silence. I was alone in the giant, empty space. Holding the folder. Holding my fate. I drove, but not home. I drove for hours. Thinking. Planning. The father in me was screaming no. This was wrong. This was crossing a line I swore I'd never cross again. But the keeper was calculating. Weighing. The job was impossible, for anyone else. For me, it was just extremely dangerous. The safe, the shielding, the lack of network, it was all classic Thorne. It was a puzzle. And I had a piece he never knew was missing. I needed to see that USB drive.it was a 2-day drive to the city where my secret box lived. I couldn't fly, too many traces. So I drove through the night, the folder burning a hole in my passenger seat. I thought about my son. What would he think if he knew? He'd be horrified. He'd think his father was a monster. Maybe he'd be right. I reached the city as a cold rain began to fall. The bank was small, private. I gave the false name, showed the old key, gave the fingerprint scan I'd registered decades ago. The clerk led me to the room. The box was heavy. Inside, among a few meaningless documents and a stack of old cash, was a small, sealed anti-static bag. Inside that, the silver USB drive.it looked ancient. Would any modern computer even read it? It was a gamble. A huge one. I found a library on the other side of town. I used a public computer, but first I used a cheap disposable device, a burner laptop I bought with cash. I connected nothing. I inserted the drive.it. Took a moment. Then a single window popped up. No files. Just a command prompt. A blinking cursor. And 3 words asterisk asterisk, who seeks the maze? Asterisk asterisk. My heart hammered against my ribs. It wasn't data. It was a test. A gateway. I knew Thorne's mind. He loved literary puzzles. Old codes. I thought for a minute, my fingers hovering over the keys. My last job. The client's name was a code from a Shakespeare play. I typed the name I'd used to infiltrate his network 25 years ago. Asterisk asterisk Ariel. Asterisk asterisk. The cursor blinked. Then text began to scroll. Fast. Lines of complex, beautiful code. Architecture. Schematics. It was a master key. Not to a specific system, but to Thorne's methodology. His philosophy of security. It was a Rosetta Stone for his life's work. And buried in the code were what looked like back doors. Maintenance protocols. Secret pathways he'd built into his own systems, in case he ever needed to get back in. The drive wasn't a list. It was a skeleton key to every system Silas Thorne had ever designed, including, almost certainly, the one protecting Arthur Brant's tablet. I pulled the drive out. The screen went dark. I sat in the library chair, my hands trembling. This changed everything. This wasn't just a way to do Carter's job. This was power. Dangerous, terrifying power. Carter wanted me to use my old skills. But with this key, I wouldn't just be bypassing Thorne's system. I'd be owning it. I could walk in and out like a ghost. But then what? Give the tablet to Carter? Let him deal with Brant? A man with kind eyes who stole from worse men? The drive in my pocket felt like a live wire. It gave me a chance. Not just to survive, but to fight back. To maybe, just maybe, cut Carter's leash for good. But I had to be smart. Carter would be watching. He'd expect me to case Brant's house. He'd have his own people on the perimeter. I had to do everything by his book. Until the moment I didn't. I drove back home. The night before the job, my son called. His voice was small. "Dad, are you okay?" "That car the other night." "I'm fine, son," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "Just an old friend passing through. Everything's all right." The lie tasted like poison. "How are you?" A long pause. We're good. We'd like to come for dinner. This Sunday. If you'll have us." The emotion that rose up then almost choked me. Hope. Guilt. Love. Terror. "I'd like that," I managed to say. "I'd like that very much." "Okay," he said, and I could hear the unshed tears in his voice. "Okay, Dad. See you Sunday." I hung up. I looked at the tools laid out on my kitchen table. Lock picks, a slim gym, a custom device to spoof security sensors. The tools of the keeper. And I made a promise to myself, to my son, to the ghost of the man I used to be. I would do the job. I would get the tablet, but I wouldn't give it to Carter. I would use what was on it. I would use Thorne's key. I would turn Carter's game against him. I would protect Arthur Brant, not destroy him. And I would get my life back. Or I would die trying. The night of the job arrived. Dark. Overcast. No moon. I dressed in black. I checked my tools. I put the silver USB drive on a chain around my neck, under my clothes. My secret. My weapon. I drove to the lake. Brant's house was a masterpiece of glass and steel, lit up against the dark water. I could see the security cameras panning, the motion sensor lights, the silent digital sentinels of Silas Thorne. From a distance, I used a long-range scanner. I plugged Thorne's key drive into my burner laptop. The code scrolled. It saw the system. It recognized its own DNA. It began to map the pathways. The cameras froze on a loop. The motion sensors went blind. The electronic locks on the doors and the safe, they clicked open. One by one. Silent. Invisible. Thorne's maze welcomed me home. I slipped inside the house. It was quiet. Still. I moved through the living room, past family photos, Brant with his wife, his 2 daughters. A good man who made a bad choice. I found the study. The shielded room. The safe door was ajar. Inside, on a velvet cushion, was the tablet. I took it. I also took something else. A handwritten note I saw on Brant's desk. It read, "For my girls. If anything happens to me, take this to the authorities." I'm sorry. My resolve hardened. This was not a man who deserved Carter's justice. I was about to leave when I heard it. A soft click from the hallway. Not part of the house. A shoe on tile. I wasn't alone. I melted into the shadows behind the study door. I held my breath. A figure appeared in the doorway. Tall. Silhouetted. It wasn't Brant. It wasn't security. It was Carter. He stood there, looking at the open safe, the empty cushion. He didn't seem surprised. He just smiled. "I knew you'd find a way in, Keeper," he said, his voice echoing softly in the empty house. "I just didn't think you'd be stupid enough to try and keep it." He stepped into the room, a gun held low at his side. "The tablet. Hand it over. And the drive. I know you have it. I always knew Thorne gave something up that night. I just never knew what. Until I saw you weren't afraid of his system. He'd played me. The whole job was a trap. Not for Brant. For me. To flush out Thorne's last secret. I was in the dark. He was in the light from the hallway. I had the tablet. He had the gun. And the cold, certain knowledge that he'd won. So here I am. Standing in another man's house. A ghost from my past pointing a gun at my heart. The weight of the tablet in my hands. The weight of the USB drive against my chest. My son waiting for a dinner I might never make. Carter's finger is on the trigger. His winter blue eyes are calm. He's already won in his mind. But he forgot one thing. A keeper doesn't just know how to get into a maze. He knows how to change the walls. And as I look past Carter into the hallway, I see something his arrogance made him miss. Something my scanner showed me, and his didn't. A small, redundant motion sensor. Thorne's final joke. It's not connected to the alarm. It's connected to the house's smart system. The sprinklers. The lights. And I have the key to the whole system in my hand. I have one move left. One desperate, dangerous move that could save my life, or end it right here on Arthur Brandt's polished floor. But that is a story for next time. If you were in that study with a gun pointed at you, what would you do? Fight? Surrender? Try to talk? Let me know in the comments. And tell me where you're joining us from tonight. Because the conclusion of this story, it's coming. And it will be the most tense, the most emotional, the most shocking part of all. The final move of the keeper. Make sure you're subscribed. The notification bell is your ticket to the finale. You won't want to miss what happens when the trigger is pulled, the lights go out, and an old man has to decide what his life and his son's life is really worth. Until then, remember. In a game of secrets, the winner isn't the one with the most guns. It's the one with the last key. Good night. See you for the end.